It's Donald Trump MK2. He was inaugurated on Monday, and to say he's hit the ground running would be an understatement. A whole host of executive orders signed, an address to Davos, a call for Putin to end the war in Ukraine, and a warning to NATO allies that they need to increase their budget provisions for defence. It certainly has been a lively start, and I'm sure we can expect more over the next 4 years. This is the latest Downtown Den Politics podcast.
The return of the sausages.
All sorts of things that I would have wanted as a kid that I couldn't have, right? Famously, Sky TV.
How'd that happen? I guess I just forgot what was going on.
They're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats.
Well, welcome to this special edition of the Downtown Den Politics podcast with me, Frank McKenna, and our American correspondent, Martin Littrot, Martin, tell us where you are and why it looks as though it's snowing outside. It looks as though you're in the Wirral again, lad, not in the States.
Yes, it's a bit more Thurston beach than Florida beach at the moment. We had, for the first time in 35 years, snow fell here in Florida. We had 5.5 inches. It caked everything. It looked beautiful. Palm trees dripping with ice and frost. Nobody knew what to do. There were people out in bikinis getting towed behind golf carts on surfboards. We've got no infrastructure for it, so all the roads are frozen. So it's been exciting. Luckily, the warm weather's chasing it back out this weekend, and normal service will be resumed. Rather unlike perhaps the next 4 years ahead of us.
Yeah, well, absolutely. We'll turn to that in a moment. But just sticking to the weather for a moment, because, of course, on a more serious note, we've seen those horrendous fires in California, which don't seem to be abating. And there's been a big political row about this, of course. But is there any sense in the States that climate change might actually be having an impact on the States, or is this just seen as natural disasters that come and go, and it's just a coincidence that these scientists are suggesting that there's something called climate change?
There's an acknowledgement that there is, climate crisis, and that there is a contribution from industry and human habitat to that. It feels like it's a long way off, though, and people are a bit more concerned about the here and now. It's a little bit like, health warning of cigarettes. You may get cancer in the future and it may not be good for you. But right now I'm in the pub and I quite fancy a fag with me beer. And I think it's a little bit more, we're more focused on the moment here. There is a huge lobby group for clean energy. It has a different flavour than European lobby groups. We don't have just stop oil super gluing themselves to the pavement here. But there's a significant argument for a switch towards renewables or cleaner energy sources, but it's driven by business. So our nuclear industry is having a resurgence here. 3 Mile Island, at the site of one of the worst nuclear disasters, at least in the United States, is about to be unmothballed, if that's a word, because the demand for energy, particularly for data energy, is huge. So there is a conversation taking place about how do we do this in a responsible way, but it's not as restrictive a conversation as it feels like you're having in the UK and elsewhere in Europe, where it's stop doing things or ban things. It's about transitioning here, and maybe that's healthier. I don't know. Maybe that's healthier.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's get into the big news of the week, not just for the US, but for the world. And it's the second Donald Trump presidency, the greatest political comeback, certainly in modern times. I don't think anyone can deny that, whether you're a lover or a hater of President Trump. And as I said in my introductory remarks, Martin, he's certainly hit the ground running, hasn't he? Because all of those executive orders, now some of that I think was obviously for show, and he is the archetypal showman. He knows how to work an audience. He knows how to work television which is still the main medium for politicians. And he did, I think, on Monday, feed an awful lot of red meat to his base. And I think we all sense that, unlike the first time he won, 2016, he came into office in January 2017, when it all appeared a bit chaotic. He does have a strategy, a plan in place, and people around him who are able to deliver that plan. Would that be a fair assessment?
I wouldn't say it's less chaotic. I would say it's planned chaos.
Okay.
He thrives on that. He thrives on that. In 16, when he won, well, first of all, his candidature was unexpected. Nobody thought he was going to be taken seriously as a candidate. Of course, that was an event of itself. When he came into office in 16, he didn't have the understanding or the infrastructure you need to create an administration. So he borrowed the GOP. He borrowed the Republican Party's infrastructure. And the traditional way of running an administration was what continued. And it frustrated him. He didn't like the fact that things couldn't happen because of he wanted them to happen a certain way. They couldn't. This time around, he's had a period of time, both those 4 years of governance and 4 years in opposition, to kind of understand that better and to ally himself with others who are more experienced, perhaps in the politics of the Hill, to deliver that. So he's coming in a much stronger position than he was last time. I think, nobody is surprised that he's there.
Yeah.
I think I said on this conversation last year, and then the articles have been writing for you, he's going to win, and partly due to the incompetence of the sitting administration and the Democratic Party's campaign machine, but also because he reflected the zeitgeist. Remember that great Wayne Gretzky, the ice hockey player? He was asked, "Why are you so good?"
Yes.
And he said that because I skate to where the puck's going.
Yeah.
And Trump's the same. He's read the runes of the world and particularly of US society much better than anybody else, and has gotten in step with that, and it's propelled him to a sizable, workable-ish position of power. So he's there now. So it's no mystery that he's there. What is mysterious is how it's going to be operated. This Elon Muskism and the rest of it is all. But I think I'm calling Donald Trump the disruptor in chief. I think what he's talking about isn't radical in and of itself, but doing it is, because politics, at least stateside and probably in the UK and elsewhere, has become a bit of a same old talking shop. And nobody's pushed that to the side and said, I'm just going to get on with it and do it. And that's what's appealing to a significant proportion of the population about Donald Trump's attitude to it. So there's a lot of excitement, little trepidation, but a lot of excitement about seeing things happen. And this week, the points that you just itemized there are, if this is the flavor of what's to come, we're going to have to think about how we as businesses and how we as political commentators and others react and respond to it, because it's not going to be back to business as usual and the same old processes. I mean, you've got the world's most powerful man, Donald Trump. You've got the world's richest man, Elon Musk. And you've got the owner of the world's largest media platform, Zuckerberg, all working together. And they're not issuing press releases through departments or taking statements to the floor of Congress to be debated. They're typing them in all caps on their social media platforms for the world to see. Bank of America got hammered by Trump at Davos the other day. JP Morgan got attacked online last night. Every company is going to have a Trump's truth bomb strategy. What are you going to do if it's your company's name that you wake up in the morning to? You go to bed as a corporate affairs advisor, everything seems okay, and 7 a.m. your phone's off the hook. So it's a different era, mysterious, but only in how it's going to play out.
Well, let's go through some of those policy initiatives that he's already indicated he's going to pursue in a little more detail, and perhaps those that are understandable to a Brit audience. There'll be other things, I'm sure, exercising the minds of Americans more so than they will be us here in the UK. One thing I would say in terms of how this administration is going to operate, I think the appointment of Susie Wiles tells you that he's serious about having a staff in place in the White House who do know how things work. And, she's a very experienced operator. And, for, say, Andy Hunter style person, I would probably compare it to in terms of what Blair had in his Downing Street operation at the time when he was PM. But let's take some things that I've heard Brits quietly say, that's a bit of a breath of fresh air. And DEI and the scrapping of diverse, equality, and inclusion policy. And an awful lot of businesses and business leaders who I certainly wouldn't put in the category, Martin, of being racist or sexist or misogynist, but who feel that on occasion, people may have been promoted to positions that they're not necessarily worthy of simply because they tick a particular box. And they are, as I say, quietly welcoming the fact that Donald Trump has said no more of that. Now, coming as we do from the progressive side of politics, we know all the arguments for why those policies were introduced, and there were good reasons for it. But my guess is there's people, even those who voted Democrat, who will have been given at least 2 cheers when that announcement was made by President Trump.
Yeah, I think there's been, an overcompensation. So I heard someone on the television the other night saying, might have been in the 70s, of all the Ivy League universities, only 12 students were people of colour. And of course, that's a challenge and an institutionalized problem that needs to be addressed. I think what people feel now is that maybe the pendulum has swung too far the other way, and there's in mandating things that could have been perhaps addressed and dealt with differently, we've overcompensated. And in the States, I think also there's sensitivities around some of this that are more amplified perhaps than they are in the United Kingdom. You've got to remember I'm living in a southern state, and in the southern states they're very, very slow to repeal some of the things that we've assumed for granted for a long time. I think people were fed up, particularly on the government side of things, with there being these additional hoops and hurdles to overcome in getting things done. Trump is smart enough to not wade into this as a kind of civil rights and civic rights debate. He's framing it as meritocracy. The best person gets the job, and you can't argue with that. Anyway. So now we know not everybody gets the opportunity, not everybody gets the invitation to even apply, let alone get the job. And I think efforts need to continue and remain to balance that better. I think it would be hard to say that in modern America, if you are a black woman, you've got as much opportunity presented to you as a white male. You still don't. There's an imbalance. But I think the biggest imbalance is between pockets of wealth. There is a very small minority of people who are super wealthy. We just mentioned the kind of brotocracy that's running the nation now. And there's a lot of people, and even here where I live in a nice kind of suburban part of the beach, but my kids went to a state school, and we have millionaire restaurateurs and children on the table with them, and people who were living in mobile homes or FEMA shelters, as they were called then.
Yes.
at the table as well. So, there's still great disparity in incomes and wealth. And I think that's what needs to really be looked at. How do we get more of the opportunity to more of the people who really need it because of their financial situation as much as anything else? So I hope that we do see some efforts to try and balance that out as well.
Okay. And then we've already touched upon this in terms of our earlier conversation, as far as you having snow in Florida and California having wildfires concerned, climate change, and his decision once again to pull out of the Paris Accords. And again, Martin, I have to say to you, some sympathy, and it was the phrase you used, actually. It was that there is a more pragmatic approach, perhaps, transitioning in terms of renewables, rather than, as critics of the government's policy in the UK will put it, bankrupting people in this charge towards a green utopia. Again, my guess is that many Americans will have welcomed that approach from the new president.
Yeah. Look, I don't know if I'm an American or not. I've been here long enough to qualify, but probably somewhere mid-Atlantic still. Look, I'm not. I didn't support Trump. I didn't vote for him. Didn't campaign for him. Not my flavour. Just personality alone puts me off. The kind of attitude to things, indictment and things else. But I can get behind 100% the challenge that he's trying to address. I mean, this is politics. You and I have grown up in it over the years. It's just become a bit of a talking shop. I'm not a doing shop as much as it needed to be. There's a few moments in time where things have happened. This is one of those. This is one of those moments when the game has changed and the rules have changed. So hard power has replaced soft power. So the idea of America being the kindly big brother to the rest of the world and putting an arm around and picking them up when they stumble is gone. Yeah, this is now, we are going to be a competitor on the global stage in the manner that everybody else is behaving. And let's be frank, the rest of the world is illiberal, right? China is illiberal. The Middle East, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is illiberal. India is illiberal. We may think it's the mother of democracies, but it's not, right? It's their attitudes to not only their own people, but their borders is unbelievable. So you've got the rest of the world playing the game to a certain set of rules, whether you like them or not.
No.
And the US expected to behave in a different way. And Trump has said, and the American public have supported him, that game's up. I'm sorry. If it doesn't make America safer, stronger, and richer, I'm not interested. So the lesson for Keir Starmer, the European presidencies, others around the world is, how can you align your ambitions with those ambitions as well? And I think it's going to be really difficult for a this Labour Party-led administration to understand that. I don't think they can see that they're going to have to play a different game because the rules have changed, rather than the approach that they're currently taking. Things like the British Indian Ocean Treaty. We have, we've said we're going to do it because it's the right thing to do. Yeah. I don't know why or what, but that is seen at a geopolitical level as us retreating from an important theatre. And, we're in this deal with the Australians, the New Zealanders and the Americans to build nuclear defence armaments for Australia submarines to help patrol that Indian Ocean and that Pacific area. And at the same time, we're in a conversation to withdraw and close military bases there. Trump's going to look at that and say, hey, are you on my side? Are you with me on there? What's going on there? We've got to understand now that we've got to look at all the things that we're saying we're doing, what we're doing through this new lens, because the US is the world's largest economy. The economy is strong and hot here. We've got our stock market made 25% gains last year and the year before. These pension funds are doing okay. Now, is that going to continue? Hell of course not. It's impossible. But we're at a decent place at the moment. We've got companies like Nvidia on the US stock market. Didn't exist 5 years ago, and now Nvidia is worth more than the entire FTSE. Yeah. So the scale of what we're talking about is huge, and I think there's a bit of a not wake up for Keir Starmer and other political figures and parties to understand that Trump, even in this first week, has reset what the rules of the game are, and we need to get caught up quick. It's not going to go back. It's the one-way valve. The tide's gone through now. It's happened, So interesting. That Davos speech was fantastic. He stood up and told world leaders what he thought of them and what they needed to do if they wanted to play nicely with America. And that meant, tariffs are a threat. But if you want to come and build your factories and make your products, invest in the infrastructure here in America, we'll make the most favourable tax conditions for you. We'll find the people for you. Pick a factory, pick a piece of land. It's yours. If Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer want to, have a successful trade mission, that's the kind of language that they're up against. We've got to position ourselves. There's new game, new sheriff in town, new game, new rules.
And then a slightly more nuanced approach to Ukraine, which, again, I have to say, Martin, you did predict. You said that he wasn't necessarily going to cozy up to Putin and just give Russia what they wanted. And that does appear to be the case. I think he senses that Putin is in a bit of a hole. He does need to end that war. It's not going well for Russia. Okay, it's been devastating for Ukraine, and we note the devastation. But nonetheless, in terms of its economy, in terms of the loss of life, fuck's sake, they're having to import Koreans in to do the fighting for them in Ukraine now. So Trump, the great deal maker, recognising that and saying, in, I think, a reasonable way, actually, and again, he's being criticised because he's been overly friendly to Putin, but what's the point of kicking somebody when they're down if you genuinely want to see an end to that war? He's trying to bring him to the table, but he's also saying, listen, mate, we know you're not in the strongest position. So the Ukraine thing, well, what do you make of it? Do you think it could get resolved?
Undoubtedly. So, I mean, there's three things that play on that. One is Putin's both his health and his health standing amongst the Russian people and those powerful oligarchs is at the weakest it's ever been. I mean, allegedly he's got Parkinson's disease, and the big machinery that still exists around the communist, the old Communist Party and the kind of richer elements of Russian society are looking at who comes next anyway. So that's on the cards. Secondly is if we do drill baby drill here in the States and open up, the Alaskan fields that have been kind of kept closed for environmental reasons, it's going to depress the dollar value of a barrel of gas. So that's terrible for the Russian economy based on its requirement on that. And then thirdly, they're at danger of losing the war militarily, and they can't be seen to be weakened. So a tactical resolution is in their interest. So you can see with all those three things in play that from a European point of view, we want gas pipes turned back on again. Couldn't really have another cold winter and not have access to Russian gas through the Ukrainian pipelines, etc. So we're all interested in making this happen. And Trump wants to be applauded and have a gold carriage taken through the streets of London or whatever. Why not? Part of the price to pay for ending the conflict. So I do think that that's definitely going to be addressed over the coming 2 or 3 months, I would imagine. What I've got my head around, having followed this story for the whole Trump campaign, really, you have to be able to suspend your kind of eye-rolling disdain for Donald Trump, the person, and think about the administration as a separate entity. I mean, to my eyes, the bloke's a bit of a clown with his orange makeup and his funny hair and the way he self-promotes and all. He's not my cup of tea, right? But if you can park that and just say, some of the things he's saying, the connectivity he's making with the electorate, the early results that he's starting to perhaps demonstrate he's capable of delivering are impressive. And you have to say, well, maybe we can get behind this rather than for the sake of wanting to oppose him, getting in the way. And I think for the Europeans and Britain in particular, because we're outside of that EU effect, we've got to get our arms on that real quick.
A lot of other world conflicts for him to get involved
with. China is the game, right? So Russia-Ukraine is a European war, and the threat of China as the second largest economy and the largest holder of US government debt is much more perplexing to us here. Yeah. So if you are not supporting Trump visibly, audibly supporting Trump in strengthening the American position vis-a-vis China, whether that's on intellectual property rights, whether that's on tariffs and imports and trade, whether that's on human, whatever it's on, military presence in and around the China Sea, you're not going to be looked favorably upon. So I don't see why we would have any objection to backing all of his broad brushstroke positions on China. And if that curries favour and allows us to make progress elsewhere, then that's a good thing. And that's how we're going to play it.
What about the Middle East policy?
His first overseas phone call that Trump made on Wednesday was to the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. So Saudi Arabia is the power broker. So the largest conflict in the Middle East, as you know, is Iran and Saudi Arabia. The battle between the different factions within Islam. Israel is the cause celeb and the firebrand in it all, but Iranian Saudi Arabian conflict through hard and soft diplomacy is at the heart of it. And before the October hostage taking, the Abraham Accords were about to be signed, which normalized business relationships between Israel and Saudi Arabia. The conversation on Wednesday talked about putting that back on track again, and also that the kingdom is thinking of investing $600 billion into the US for its expansion and economic diversity programs. So that will be setting up joint ventures on clean energy. That will be setting up joint ventures on electric vehicles, on et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can see that. $600 billion. These are vast sums. When China and Trump had a trade deal last time to prevent tariffs, and that was pre-COVID, I think it all came off the rails because of COVID, there was $200 billion of additional spending to kind of balance the payments better from committed to by China. I don't think they got there, but $200 billion. These are sums that would turn the UK economy on its head overnight if they happen. I saw, in our own neck of the woods up on Merseyside, the government's backed 10 million to support AI infrastructure. It's great. We're grateful for it. But 10 million versus the 600 billion that the Saudis. Where do you think the people I talk to, foreign direct investors and banks and pension funds, where are they putting their energies and resources? They're going to follow that 600 billion pound investment pipeline rather than our 10 billion pound pipeline. So we've got problems there. I think in the Middle East, you've seen today that the ceasefire in Hezbollah has been extended in the absence of a Syrian government to enforce it. The Israelis or the IDF and others are in situ and making sure that holds. And it looks like early days. Let's hope that the Hamas deal has kind of held up for but for the time being as well. Aid is getting in, which is fantastic, and a little bit of rebuilding can happen there. But I think if we can get the Abraham Accords between Saudi and Israel over the line, that changes the dynamic of the Middle East going.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, the AI agenda has been high on his priority list, and something that Tony Blair's been banging on about for about 5 years now. His whole conference last year that I attended that Tony Blair Institute hosted it, was all around AI and the importance of investment into that. And Donald Trump's picked up that baton with some gusto, I have to say. The numbers are eye-watering.
Look at the people that Trump's surrounded by. They're the tech bros. They're the companies that know that they're going to be. Their future is going to be because they understood and exploited the opportunity that AI. Zuckerberg's Facebook post, that's his preferred means of communication now. His Facebook post this morning said that they were going to increase their capex next year to 65 billion. What had been expected to be 51 billion. It's going to be 65 billion on capex. And he's talking about building a data center the size of Manhattan. So if you've been to New York City, you know Manhattan's a sizable piece of real estate. That data center is going to need huge power. It's going to need lots of skilled people to look after it and to make it work. So if they're willing to put 65 billion into capex, goodness knows what the multiple return on that investment looks like when robotics in all our factories comes in, when AI is in every device and every internet connectivity is automated. There's a whole industrial revolution size scale change coming, and the US is wholeheartedly, lustily embracing it. We, the rest of the world, has to do the same.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Let's move on to those tech bros then, because obviously people are always fascinated by the personalities around politics. And you've used the phrase on more than one occasion, Martin. Politics is people who wanted to make it in Hollywood are basically groggy people.
True business groggy people.
And Elon Musk, whatever you think of him, I'm sure his mother loves him. But he's an odd-looking character. And then you've got Zuckerberg there, and you've got Bezos has come into the tent now and is apparently making a documentary with Melania, isn't he? Trump's missus, the First Lady. All of this seems to be quite cozy at the moment, but they're all fairly big egos. And the one thing we do know about Donald Trump is he doesn't like, let's extend this showbiz analogy for a second, sharing the stage. Do you think there is a danger of that relationship, certainly the one between he and Musk, coming unstuck at some point?
Yeah, I think I wrote a piece for you just before the election or the inauguration. My prediction for 2025 is the world's biggest divorce.
Yes.
And it's not Charles and Camilla. So. No doubt those two are going to bump into each other. There's just not enough oxygen in the room to keep both of those egos alive. In fact, Trump already got rid of Vivek Ramaswamy, who was the co-leader of Dodge. The formal reason was because with J.D. Vance becoming the VP, there was a vacancy in Ohio, and that he was perhaps interested in that. But the governor has already selected the person who's going there. So if Ramaswamy is interested in a political career, perhaps it's to replace the governor in 26 when his term limits expire. But he's got shut of him. And I think on Tuesday, so isn't this great that you have these enormous announcements and you remember them by the day of the week they came out rather than the year they were made? Tuesday's mega announcement about putting 500 billion behind AI and data. and having partners lined up to do it. SoFi Bank was one of those that was tagged as perhaps being part of that. And Trump announced that at 8:10 Mar-a-Lago time, which is here in Florida. And about an hour later, Musk posted, SoFi Bank hasn't got more than 10 billion in available cash. There's no way they could be the partner. And I think the phone rang, and Musk said no more about that. So those tensions are there. Trump isn't going to let Musk or anybody get the glory for anything. That's the game. So you have to tug the fall. I mean, interesting is that some no-mark congressman from Tennessee this morning has tabled an amendment to Constitutional Amendment 22, which is the term limit amendment, to try and have a vote on allowing a third term for Trump. And in his argumentation, says because already Trump has shown that the nation can be saved, we need to give the guy more time. Now, this congressman is the equivalent of some North London jumped up backbencher making noises, but the idea's out there now. The idea's been floated. So, and I think that's probably the other big challenge that sits out there. So one is that they all fall out and too much energy is wasted on he said, she said, they said, and they're squabbling on their various social media platforms. The bigger one, the one I'm more worried about, is the constitutional element. So we have a system here that's got three branches: the executive, the legislature, and judiciary. And the role really is that the legislature, just Congress, makes rules, and then the executive delivers them, and then the judicial interprets them if there's questions about it. Trump, as the executive, head of the executive branch, doesn't seem to recognize the importance of the legislative branch and kind of wants to reverse roles a little bit, whereby he makes the laws, they make them happen, and then the government departments deliver them. And there's going to be tensions there. You've already seen the Supreme Court has said there's a hold on this birthright executive order. There'll be other things around immigration, and there'll be other things around executive orders that just won't fly because constitutionally they're just not going to get done. But I think there's going to be a banging of heads between Congress, senators, representatives, legislative elements of governance, and the executive. And it might not happen now, but you may get a midterm set of election results where the ballots changes, and then you'll have, I think, very confrontational constitutional challenges between Trump and speakers of the House, and leaders of the delegation. And that could be very ugly. That's the kind of stuff that uprisings and civil wars arise from. I'm not predicting that, but constitutional crises is dangerous territory.
And that's the fascinating thing in terms of this presidency, I think, in that he does at this moment in time appear all-powerful. As we've explained, he's hit the ground running. We've not talked about immigration. You touched on it in terms of the birthright policy there, but there's lots of other things he's done in that space as well. But in 2026, so less than 2 years away, there will be midterms. And then, in time gone by, the last 2 years of the presidency, it's lame duck time, isn't it, Martin?
Especially the second term presidency.
Yeah, for sure.
Assuming he doesn't get the extension, but
Yeah, and listen, he'll be 82 by the time the next election comes around. And anybody who looks at the pictures, as I have, and I'm sure many others have, of Biden being inaugurated to what Joe Biden looks like now, 4 years later, and let's face it, a tough bloody job, This, whether the Constitution has changed or not, and there's all sorts of reasons why that is very, very difficult indeed. Whether Trump would be up for it in 4 years' time is another thing as well. But equally,
or even alive.
But equally, Martin, I think that, you've hit the nail on the head, haven't you? You could have a very different complexion in terms of the political makeup of the Senate House. So it could all change within, as I say, 2 years.
Yeah. I mean, Trump is an unhealthy man.
Yeah.
And people who travel with him and talk about how they think he's got, maybe the first signs of some degenerative disease. His diet's atrocious. He just eats McDonald's, like literally Air Force One is just plain loads of boxes of McDonald's. He smells a bit. There's a whiff of old age around him, if you know what I mean by that. There's not a healthy man, and that could be on the cards as well. And like you said, at 78 to 82, and let's hope it doesn't happen. But that's not to be discounted entirely as well.
Yeah,
I think what his plan is to get as much done as he possibly can in the first year and a half.
Yeah.
In a manner that gets his agenda over the line, gives him the authority to almost select his whoever bids for the job after him, and also enriches himself, his family, and his personal stature. He's pretty unabashed about that. I mean, the release of a meme coin, Trump Gold, millennia, all that coin. The whales bought them. They made 75 billion between them, and they're worth a penny again today. But somewhere along the line, somebody made something else.
Yeah.
So he's unabashed about all that stuff. So I think the front end of this is going to be loaded with the stuff that will be pages in history. But I think that the consequences of it are probably going to reach on beyond.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like Trump. I think that's the third time I've said it. So let's perhaps accept it as true. But the stuff he's talking about is what all my neighbours are talking about. Worried by immigration. We've got a porous border, not good. We've got issues around tax and interest rates and inflation. Whilst the macro economy is strong and the stock market's good, cost of living is really high for people here. Our university bills are big, our mortgage rates are high, our car payments are up, gas has gone up a bit in recent times, medicines are more expensive, health insurance, etc. People are talking about those things, and he's talking about those things. And people have faith that actually, of the candidates available and the political persuasions in front of them, his is the one most likely to tackle those issues. And I think that pragmatic streak is probably what's going to be the legacy of Trump, rather than an individual piece of policy or an outcome, which is something that came to an act of Congress. I think it's going to be that idea that you don't need to have political parties modelled in the way that we have for so long, and that there's going to be a more populist flavour and feel to. And our man Farage is, thinking that perhaps he's going to be the UK's version of that, the Poundland Donald Trump, as I've heard him called. But he won't be, because he looks like an extra from Keeping Up Appearances. He's like Richard Wilson with the driving gloves on. He's just Trump at least looks a bit statesmanly. He's a big imposing presence. Farage hasn't got that. So, but there's a space for somebody to be that. Oh, not Tommy Robinson or whatever his latest alias is. But maybe on our side of the divide, maybe there's a place for a more down-to-earth, populist, centre-left administration that talks openly and honestly about things that people care about. I think Tony Blair got close to it. And I think there's an appetite for that in the market again. Not sure the current occupants of Downing Street are that. I think that it feels a little bit like it's still policy wonk intelligentsia end of things. They're not bad people, of course. Meaning got a plan, which the previous administration didn't. But I don't think it connects. And I think you've said on some of the podcasts I've been listening to from you, the policies might be right, but the communication's wrong. And Trump perhaps the other way around. Maybe some of the ideas are wrong. Communication's brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Well, that's a great segue, Martin, into a short break, because when we come back, I want to spend a little bit of time on the government and the impact on the Labour government in terms of Trump's election, and also how the Democrats have reacted to the defeat. Because, again, from the outside looking in, it appears to me as though they've almost gone to ground. So stay with us. We'll be back to talk about the opposition, if I can call it that way, to the orange one, and get Martin's thoughts on what's happening this side of the pond as well. Stay with us. We'll be back in a moment. Downtown in Business has hit the ground running in 2025 with events right across the country, including in Manchester, in Birmingham, and in Liverpool. And throughout the next 12 months, we'll be joined by mayors, by ministers, by chief executives, by decision makers from local government, regional government, and national government, talking to you about the decisions, the policies that impact on your business. If you want to get involved, the fastest growing business organisation in the UK, please visit our website, all the W's, downtowninbusiness.com. Click on the membership section and you can find out all the details of how you can join DIB. Well, welcome back to this special edition of the Downtown Den Politics podcast with me, Frank McKenna, joined by Martin Liptrot, our man in snowy Florida, would you believe? And Martin, we've talked a lot about Trump and the way he's hit the ground running and the way he was able to connect again with the American electorate to secure the presidency. And no small part for that was the failure of the Democrats to really get with the program. And we spoke when Trump was elected about the campaign, about Kamala Harris, about Biden, all of those sort of things. I just wonder how the Democrats post-election have handled this. And even in terms of the announcement that Donald Trump was giving a pardon to the January the 6th insurrection rioters, doesn't appear that you've got Democrats out there who are, this is outrageous, this is that. They almost appear to have just left the stage, Martin.
Yeah, well, I think they have. It's exactly what has happened. Look, Joe Biden was a solid foil for Obama. Kept the blue-collar trade union end of the party on board, as Obama kind of reformed some of the kind of more traditional democratic processes, leadership rules and roles. But when he got elected, it was to be a transition president. That was his words. But power is, compelling and corrupting, and unfortunately, he did everybody a huge disservice by having to, finally get removed from the captaincy. And what happened was we finished up with a UK-style short campaign in a political system that has huge volumes of money flowing through it over an extended period of time. So Trump's campaign ran effectively for 6 years, 7 years, and they'd been raising money that entire time. And Kamala Harris had 8 weeks, 6 weeks, or whatever it was. In reality, it was never going to win. Not only she would have won anyway, because she had 7 years, she wasn't up to the job. But that was the end of that. And I think what's happened since is that the Democrats don't know how to respond to what we talked about earlier in this sea change in politics, the move away from us and them. And the biggest shift, you got to remember that America isn't a place. it's 50 states, and each one has a different look and feel about it. So you can't roll this across the whole country. But when you look at the voting numbers and you look at the breakdown of what happened in that election, that kind of coalition of groups, constituencies that Democrats had thought of as their own and maybe taken for granted started to crumble. People of color, Latinos especially, young people, women, saw more in what Trump was saying than they did in what Kamala Harris was saying. I mean, not in huge numbers, but in significant enough numbers, transferred their allegiance. And what people I speak to are reading into that is that they didn't become Trumpites. They just lost faith in the standard political party rhetorics of how things were going to get addressed. They're worried about their kids getting knifed. They're worried about shootings. They're worried about not paying the mortgage. They're worried about not having gas money. They're worried about not having healthcare. And there wasn't a coherent conversation about anything different happening. When Kamala Harris was asked that question, what will you do differently than Joe? And she said nothing, literally nothing. You're like, well, there's 35% of the population who aren't feeling great at the moment, who aren't going to support you. Gone. So I think there's a moment to come, and it'll probably be after the next round of gubernatorial, the governor elections that take place, because that's the power base really for democratic politics. There'll be a reconfiguration of where power sits within the Democratic Party. It is no longer the Obamas and the Clintons. They very much made Biden the candidate, and it's on their cross a little bit, I'm afraid, to acknowledge that was a mistake. But who takes over? Who picks up that mantle? It isn't clear. There's my favourite's Pete Buttigieg. I think Pete Buttigieg is solid and is sensible and great communicator. Is America ready for a gay man and a first husband in the White House? Who knows, right? But he's got the kind of characteristics and attributes that the new Democratic Party needs to look towards. I think it's got to not be so dependent on its kind of California elite profile as well. I think we spoke, or maybe I wrote about, the last rallies before the election, and
all the celebrities, I suppose.
It was a Hollywood Fest, Hollywood Fest, and for Kamala and Elon Musk and Dana White from the UFC were on the stage in North Carolina or wherever it was with Trump, and you're like, as a campaigner, genius, absolute genius, cut through everything, spoke to the people you need to speak to, won their support, looked more real. Nobody wanted to hear what Oprah Winfrey had to say in support of Kamala Harris. I can't even remember what she said. I watched it. So there's going to be a big moment when there needs to be some emergence of Midwestern, Southern Democrat style everyman leadership re-emerging again. And it's not visible today who that is. There's going to be a bit of soul searching within the organisation, I think.
Could be a long road back for them. And the Labour Party, of course, they came back quite quickly, actually, from their catastrophic defeat in 2019, although they have been out of power for 14 years all told. So they've gone through one or two changes of leadership. And as you will know, Martin, the first 6 months have not gone as they would have hoped. They've had all sorts of challenges, a lot of missteps. And I said on our normal podcast on Monday that phrase that stuck with me from Joe Biden was that he felt as though he'd spent too much time on the policy and not enough time on the politics. And I could certainly think that we could level that charge at the Labour government at this moment in time. But let's just stick with the relationship with the United States. I have often said, and you've said this too, it's a special relationship for America when America needed to be, but it's a special relationship for Britain because it has to be. And you pointed out America is the biggest economy on the planet. Seems to have died down this rumour that they were going to veto Peter Mandelson's appointment as US ambassador. So I just wanted to know if you picked up anything that side of the pond as far as that story was concerned. And then perhaps more generally, what you think Trump's attitude to a Starmer government is going to be. Do you really think that he's going to allow Musk to continue to troll the British government in the way he has on his X platform? And how close is he really to Farage? Because again, notable that although Nigel flew out for the inauguration, he wasn't actually in the fucking room, right? He was like, we could have gone with the MAGA hat and got as close to Donald Trump as Farage did. So all of those things, big questions there, Martin. But I suppose what I'm really saying is, what does this mean for the British government, for Britain? And, do you really think that Donald Trump goes to bed at night dreaming about Nigel Farage walking into 10 Downing Street?
No, he doesn't, is the answer to that. So let's start off with why it matters. As a UK, as a nation, is not the force it used to be, and sadly is nowhere near the force it thinks it is. It's a small windswept island off the coast of Europe when you're sitting here in Trump world. And the reality is that we have to recalibrate how and what our expectations are and our demands are to reflect this new order. So the special relationship does exist. There is still a huge affinity for the United Kingdom with Americans. So the shared language and the history is there. Everybody I speak to, when they hear me, my voice, they're like, "Oh, where are you from?" We say, "Oh, I've got a cousin who lives in Wiltshire." I don't know. No, sorry, but there's an interest. There's a genuine interest. There's a genuine love. I don't hear that when they talk to the French and the Germans, right? So we've got a little leg up on that there. I think the Churchillianness and the war years and that history is still alive and relevant to people that and we are trusted allies of each other. But I think we need to demonstrate that more, because we're a snide bunch, aren't we?
Yes.
Mocking and laughing and pointing the finger, right? We're good at that. And at the point now where we're not equals, we're being a little bit ambitious, pointing the finger and calling names and all that. We need to understand that better. And I think we need to be clear what we see as the purpose of the special relationship now. I think Trump is going to be looking for allies in some of the moves he's making. We spoke about in the Pacific arena, in kind of controlling, if not quelling, China's aspirations. He's going to be looking for support to improve America's opportunities when it comes to raw materials in Africa and other parts of maybe South America and the Middle East, and combat what is the Chinese Belt and Road arrangements. He's going to be looking for allies when it comes to the Shanghai cooperation agreements that China's forged with all different powers in India, principally, and the BRICS nations. Talking about their own currency and their own different ways of doing things. So Trump knows that he is the biggest fish in the pond, but he's going to need a few other tiddlers to swim with him and Britain's got a chance to put itself there. It's going to have to hold its nose, as I am, when Trump rocks up on your TV screen and all the rest of it. But there's bigger things at stake here. There's opportunities at stake. So I think we need an administration and we need politicians who can build those relationships. I like Peter Mandelson a lot. He worked for Peter, as you know, back in the day, and he's fabulous. But he's the wrong man for the job at the moment, because Trump's not going to let that bridge get built easily. You know, you'd be better off sending Sir Alan Sugar over and having a Trump-esque person to do the job if you can control them. You know what I mean? You know, Digby Jones, the old ex-lead, whoever. So somebody who's got that ebullient Britishness about them and is a bit, you know, combative. Trump will react a lot better to that. So I think we've got to be. It will be peace, I'm sure, because the deal's been done. It's going to be a big hill for him to climb to get himself listened to again.
They're not going to veto it, are they? The Yanks aren't going to veto that.
And they could, but that's a big diplomatic play. When, as I said earlier, he does need to find the fellow travellers. You know, he's got the European Union, the Hungarian presidency there at the moment is supportive. The Polish one that follows, I think, is relatively supportive as well, especially there's some tough rhetoric on Russia.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be people who are making the right noises. Starmer needs to get out of the Labour Party mindset and get into the 10 Downing Street mindset more. And I think that's our weakest suit as centre-left political believers, is that we can't leave the party behind when we get to power. And we have, in this circumstance, we have to. So I'd like to see him. I'd like to see him tough up and get over here and shake his hand and speak strongly in support of the president and some of his ambitions to tackle things that we all agree are wrong: Russian aggression, Chinese human rights, whatever else it wants to be. You know, Rachel Reeves making her first trip to America and not making any waves at all and going back, but making loads of waves because she went to Beijing was a mistake. Yeah. Whoever planned that didn't read the geopolitical room very well at all. We need to be all in getting behind the sensible core of what America is about. The sensible core of America is about energy production. It's about technology. It's about job creation. It's about defense and security. If you look at the FTSE 100 or 20 of a few companies it's down to now, that's what they do. They're mining companies, they're oil companies, they're defense companies, they're technology service providers, and they're big banks. Yeah, that's what FTSE stands for. Well, that's the American agenda. You know, let's. Rachel Reeves wants to start making deals with people. Grab hold of some of the CEOs of the FTSE companies, get them on the plane with you, rock up in Washington, and meet your American counterparts. I could put that deal together sitting here in Florida. You know, so she's got the government's machinery behind her. That's what we need to be doing, and that's not the way it doesn't appear to be the way that we're wired with the leadership at the moment. So I hope that somebody can get in there and rattle them up and say, you need to make the first move here. You need to get all over this. Because if we can have investments in those core industries, that's good for our economy. And if we can attract inward investment and be a friend-sure location for technology development or educational issues to America, then that's a great place for us to be. Because we're not going to be the next Vietnam or the next Indonesia in cheap labor. We're going to be, something a little higher on the skills and wages level. So why not set ourselves up as that? And you look at Liverpool. So I'm a huge... So cities in America are bigger than states, and states are bigger than federal. So cities are the power base. So Liverpool could be that. I remember a great story that when all those different city residents were asked who should be the second city of the UK, Liverpudlians suggested London. So if there's one city, if there's one city that's got the hotspot to kind of act in a Trumpian way, it's ours. So why not embrace that? Why not be big and bold? Why not say we're going to be the capital of this and go over? And I know Steve was over in America. recently. He didn't get to DC. He was in Steve Rodham, yeah. He was in Liverpool. He was in New York, Boston, and North Carolina, I think he went to.
Yeah.
Which are all good ties to Liverpool, obviously. Get them over. Get them over here and into the UK and start building those things. You know, can't see Starmer and Reeves and others doing it quickly. So seize the day, Liverpool. You know, get all those relationships built. Get people over. Get them to the game. You've got Liverpool's American ownership, Everton's American ownership. Yeah, come on. It's like this is street combat public affairs. That's that's what you do for your members. I do for my clients. Yeah. This is how you have to behave. Yeah. The idea that there's going to be some invite to a garden party that the ambassador's going to come to and it's all going to get sorted out behind the scenes. Those days are gone.
Yeah. Martin, it's been fascinating talking to you. And I did smile when you said, you know, leaders need to leave their parties behind when they become Prime Minister. I think Tony did that before he became Prime Minister.
A little rebranding always helps, right? So,
which is why he won the landslide, I guess. But listen, as I say, great to speak to you. Back home anytime soon? Are you coming over to see Moisey's Mighty Blues?
Well, yeah. I mean, that was a big change, wasn't it? So, I mean, I think it was overdue. You know, the leadership needed to be refreshed. February the 12th, is that the derby?
That's the derby game. Yeah.
Let's just win that one. I don't care what else happens. Win that one.
Well, fingers crossed. Great speaking to you, and I'll see you again very soon. And hopefully
thanks to all the team, and nice to speak to you.
Top man. Well, that's been me, Frank McKenna, with Martin Littropt, this special Downtown End Politics podcast focusing on all things America. We'll be back on Monday with our normal podcast. Joe Phillips and Jim Hancock, of course, joining me. In the meantime, have a great weekend and don't lose too much sleep over what the Donald might be up to, because, as I think we've tried to explain today, it ain't gonna all be bad. Cheers, guys. Have a good one.